Hey guys, welcome back to the AJ Analysis channel, where we're back with the World Cup coverage, the round of 16 coverage. This time we're talking about Portugal's eventual demolition of Switzerland in a really comfortable, really emphatic 6-1 win. And of course, as a result of that, we're going to be talking about Ramos, we're going to be talking about some of the other key players in this victory, we're going to be talking about the Portugal tactics. But actually, before I get into what Portugal done on the ball, I just want to quickly look at what they've done off the ball as well, because I think from a defensive point of view, they were slightly improved from what we've seen. However, I still think there were areas where Switzerland were able to get at them a little bit. Now, coming into the game, we were expecting a 4-2-3-1 from Switzerland, because that shape has been very effective for them throughout the group stage. However, for some reason, and kind of looking back on it, it looks like a mistake. I would love to know the manager's reasoning, but for some reason, Switzerland changed to a back five. And essentially the way that they played was a 5-2-1-2, sometimes a 5-3-2 with so a little bit deeper. And like I said, straight away, I don't quite get why they done this. I don't think they needed to change their shape, because I thought they were quite good in the group stage, so it was a bit of a weird decision. But either way, what they looked to do in possession was very much build in what would become a 3-2-5 shape. So the wing-backs would look to push reasonably high up the pitch, although perhaps not as high as what we might expect. We then saw Mbolo playing through the middle as the striker, Shaqiri kind of dropping into this right inside forward position, So kind of doing the same on the left hand side, Xhaka and Freuler playing as the double pivot like so, and then Rodriguez, Cher and Akanji as the back three. And the aim for Switzerland was to try and take control of the ball, and they did actually edge the possession ever so slightly. However, like I said, Portugal were improved off the ball. So one thing that Portugal done was moved Bruno Fernandes, Ramos and João Felix all really narrow. Now in the group stage I was a little bit critical of the Portugal wingers from a defensive point of view. I was saying that they defend too wide, which makes progression too easy. In this game they were much narrower. And with Fernandes, Ramos and Felix, it allowed them to go pretty much man for man with the three centre-backs, which as always is going to make it quite difficult. Now from here we would occasionally see Granit Xhaka dropping in, but Bernardo Silva would follow him, and then Carvalho on Freuler, and then Otavio dropping in on So, or it could be Bernardo Silva deeper, Otavio a little bit higher. It's kind of the same thing either way. But what we can see is that Portugal are kind of man for man in this initial phase here. However, the potential issue they do have is that if So pushes forward, they do have a 5 here, the Swiss front 5, up against the back 4, which can obviously cause problems. And I think this is why Portugal defended with the intensity that they did. The idea was that yes, we don't have quite as many players at the back, therefore that means we need to put more pressure on the ball and stop these players having time on the ball, and that was the case. So Portugal would kind of force them over to one side, for example pushing them this way, their whole team would come over like this, and genuinely I thought that Portugal were quite impressive defensively. However, there was one area where I think you could get at them, because there were situations where we would see Portugal pressing like this. They've kind of crowded one side of the pitch. Because of the fact that Switzerland had a front 5 against a back 4, there were situations where the ball could be switched out to the wing back, or obviously it could go the other way as well, with Fernandes looking to get forward down the right hand side. And that was one area where Switzerland actually, in my opinion, got into some really good positions, and they just lacked quality on the ball. So yes, we are going to go on to talk about how brilliant Portugal were in possession. I just wanted to mention this because I think Portugal were improved defensively. However, I still think there were ways you could get at them. Before we continue with the analysis, I want to talk to you guys about JerseyFIFA.com, the home of all of the greatest football kits. Whether that's the latest home shirts, the latest away shirts, tracksuits, or even retro kits, Jersey FIFA has a bit of everything. There really is something for everyone, so if you are interested, then make sure to use the link in the description down below and head to JerseyFIFA.com. Unfortunately for Switzerland, they just didn't really show the quality on the ball that they needed, and Portugal were often able to win possession back. And from here, they were absolutely lethal in transition. Now, one of the reasons for that was because they had their front three quite narrow, and also quite high up the pitch as well, which meant that they were always ready to counter-attack. And kind of like what we saw in the Brazil game, it is very dangerous to be left man for man with these Portuguese forwards, just because they have a lot of quality. So immediately the first thing that we can see Portugal were good at was playing in the transition, getting the ball into someone like João Felix, who we know is brilliant at dribbling, Ramos, who was making excellent runs off the ball, Bruno Fernandes, whose pass selection in transition is usually very good, and also his weight of pass in situations like this. Portugal looked very dangerous on the counter-attack, and were also very dangerous in sustained possession as well. So when Portugal had the ball, in this game they actually operated in a bit more of a 4-3-3 formation, though of course their actual in-possession shape is going to change and depending on the game state. However, again we can see Switzerland in their 5-2-1-2. Now, the first thing this means is that if Switzerland want to, they can put their 2 strikers on the 2 centre-backs, making life quite difficult. However, Portugal had the reaction to that, dropped Carvalho in between the centre-backs, and immediately that stopped them from being outnumbered in these areas, and allowed Portugal to get a grip of the ball. As a result of this, they could push the fullbacks extremely high up the pitch, both Guerreiro and Dalot, who came in for Cancelo, pushing really high up the pitch. João Felix then allowed to move inside, and Bruno Fernandes allowed to move inside. So we can see that they now have this 3-2-5 shape. Now, what else was interesting from here was that when Carvalho dropped deep, typically, if you're pressing with a front 2, like I said, on 2 centre-backs, that makes life quite difficult. And we often say on the channel that the solution to that is to drop another midfielder into the back 3, because it allows you to outnumber them. Now, Switzerland didn't seem too keen on that happening. They didn't want that easy initial ball progression. So as a result, an extra midfielder would often get drawn out to try and deal with Carvalho. But for me, they were just too slow. Sometimes it was So, sometimes it was Freuler, sometimes it was Xhaka. They just seemed a little bit slow to get out to the ball. And as a result, this meant that someone with the quality of Carvalho on the ball could play the ball through the lines, essentially take out 3 of the Switzerland forwards. And now we've got Bernardo Silva and Otavio both man for man in the midfield, which immediately very dangerous because Otavio and Silva are both very technical players. Bernardo Silva in particular, you back him in his 1 versus 1 duel in most games. And what we can see this is going to do is now leave Switzerland 1 versus 1 all over the pitch. Now, going man for man is a very bold, very brave strategy, because if you get it right, it's high risk, high reward, right? If you get it right, it really does work. You kind of nullify the opposition talents, and you can do a good job of stopping them. If it doesn't work, however, you're in a big problem. If you lose your individual battles, you've got a massive issue, because a man versus man battle kind of puts extra emphasis on the quality of individuals, and no disrespect to the Switzerland team, Portugal have much more quality than what Switzerland do. And that kind of showed. Now, one of the ways that Portugal done this was by trying to drag them out of position. Again, that is something we talk about a lot. In a man-to-man system, if you can drag players out, then it creates room for others. Portugal done that very well. One thing they done was got Bruno Fernandes dropping into this half space here, and João Felix doing something similar on the other side. And this worked really well. We know when Bruno Fernandes drops deep into these areas, he is brilliantly creative. He can kind of chuck balls into the box, with Ramos constantly being this box presence, which was excellent to see. And then on the other side, João Felix was really given like a free role to get on the ball, do what he wants, roam about the pitch, try and make things happen. And his ball carrying was absolutely brilliant. As a result of this, Switzerland soon realised we can't just let Bruno Fernandes and Felix drop into these areas unchallenged. So we started seeing one of the centre-backs stepping out to go and engage them. However, again, the issue is, one, it is putting emphasis on individual quality, which Felix and Fernandes have in abundance, but also it's leaving room for others. You've dragged a centre-back out of position. And then in these situations, we saw Guerreiro getting forward down this side, and he, of course, got one of the goals. And also down this side, we saw something similar as well, with Dalot doing an excellent job of getting into these areas, from where his delivery into the box was absolutely brilliant. And again, we saw that for one of the goals as well. Dalot putting a ball low into the box for Ramos to run onto and put it into the back of the net. And a bit like what we were talking about the other day, tactically, I just think Switzerland got it all wrong. I think the approach that they went for didn't work very well, and it played perfectly into Santos' hands. Now, Santos deserves a lot of credit, actually, because he is a manager that is often criticised for being pragmatic, conservative, cautious, all labels that I use to describe him tactically as a manager, because normally he is. However, in this game, we saw a real freedom for his players. Bruno Fernandes drifting into different positions, João Felix drifting into different positions, both of the fullbacks pushing really high, really wide, providing the width for the attack, and then, of course, having the nerve, I guess, to drop Cristiano Ronaldo in a game of this stature to bring Gonçalo Ramos into a team. Absolutely brilliant, and it was rewarded because he was absolutely quality. Now, the commentators were talking about him on mainstream media and the pundits about kind of this being an unknown talent performing on a big stage. This is a really good player. Ramos isn't some unknown player that's just popped up and delivered a hat-trick. He's a really good footballer. He's playing for a Benfica team which has been one of the best teams in Europe this season. We saw them in their games against PSG, how good Benfica are. Ramos is a very good player, so it kind of shows perhaps the lack of knowledge of football abroad in mainstream media in England. They kind of shoot themselves up a little bit there, because he's a very good player. This isn't someone out of nowhere. He is genuine quality, and I actually already have a date penciled in to do a video on him scouting for Manchester United. So that will be on the channel eventually. I've now got even more reason to do it because of the hat-trick. Another player who was absolutely brilliant, João Felix. We've seen him stifled a little bit over the last couple of years, his career kind of stagnating, stalling a little bit. But in this game, where his manager trusted him and gave him a bit of a license to roam and make things happen, he was absolutely brilliant. And for those reasons, Portugal were deserving of their win. I think the scoreline did flatter them a little bit. Like I said, I do think Switzerland had chances where they got into good positions with the wide overloads and just lacked quality on the ball. However, Portugal definitely deserved to win. They were the better team, and now we have to see what they can do against Morocco in the next round. We'll see what a manager delivers for that game. But that's it for this video. That's all for this match in particular. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you have enjoyed the video. And as always, I will see you in the next one.